Kids Are Talking is sponsored by Paradigm Financial Partners. Align your values and financial goals. Build your wealth and financial security for a rich and satisfying life with Paradigm Financial Partners.
Well, welcome everybody to the show. Thanks for watching. Don, you ready for the big anti-Semitism show?
I already met the three girls. They're amazing. So I think we're in for a treat.
Well, I'm really, first I want to just, thanks to Paradigm Financial Partners for sponsoring us. Their support means a lot. And thank you to the ADL for partnering with us and helping to pull the show together, because it's an important topic that needs to be addressed.
And Margie Lipschitz and Susan Walden, thank you, because without the two of you, you went to put these amazing kids together. And we love being a part of ADL. It's been in my life with my family for over 25 years. My son was part of it. I'm honored to have you now be part of Kids Are Talking. And one of the things that I want to start off with is David Brooks, who's a very well-known editorialist in the New York Times. He writes columns every week. He talks about self-awareness may be a mirage. This show tonight on anti-Semitism is not about why there's anti-Semitism. It's really about the what, where, how, and when of anti-Semitism. We know where it is. We know when it is. We know how it is. And the point of it is, it's not just in Darien, Connecticut. I think what you're going to find out tonight, that it's in your own backyard. We know it's in Europe. We know it's all over the world.
It's in Congress. It's in
Congress. It happened today, from what I understand. But we certainly know it's in our backyard. And I was actually talking to a patient today, and he kept saying to me, it's happening, it's happening in the Fairfield County area of Westport, Weston, and Norwalk. I thought it was just happening in Darien. Mm-hmm. So as you see from our subtitle, these kids are on tonight because they want us to know. These girls, the title of this show is Kids Are Talking, and the topic is anti-Semitism, teens who want us to know. David Brooks came up with a very interesting concept. We normally think of introspection, that we think we're always looking inside ourselves. This is going to be a show using his word. He defined the word called extrospection. Let me tell you what extrospection is. A very interesting word. The word is talking about basically learning from others. We learn about ourselves from listening to others and what they have to say. And so by standing outside, not assuming we know everything, we're going to be humbled, as I always say on Kids Are Talking, and we're going to learn. As much as we think we know and how much we learn, these kids are going to open our eyes tonight, because we're going to do extrospection, not introspection. But our introspection will be enhanced by listening to what they have to share with us about the what, when, and how, and when of what anti-Semitism means to them and their stories. Because on Kids Are Talking, we're interested in the stories. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm ready to hear each one of these kids tell their story and to educate us all and have extrospection and realize that self-awareness just may be a mirage. So don't think you know anything until you really listen tonight. And really, that's how we learn.
And if you're watching, feel free to drop a comment in your comment section on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll try to have the panel address anything you have to say. And thanks for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can watch more shows.
Please call in tonight.
So let's bring out the panel right after this.
teenagers are going through really similar things right now because everything's crazy.
Here we are. All right. Mike, I think it's time to meet my guests, don't you think?
Yeah, here they are. Let's
All right, so I got Jesse, I got Alana, I got Samantha, and I can't think of a better way. We took 2 weeks off of all. Look at the timing. We had Rosh Hashanah, we had Yom Kippur. We took our first 2 weeks off since we started Kids Are Talking, and now we start with you three on a subject that what could be more important than anti-Semitism, and what could be more important also to hear what you all want us to know. So, Jesse, I'm going to start with you. And I want you just to tell us a little bit about, one, why do you feel what's important about being on the show for you, and what made you want to come on the show tonight?
Sure. Hi, my name is Jessica, and what made me kind of want to be on the show was I wanted to share my story. And I really believe in the power of stories. I believe that my story can change people because I've seen it change people.
I love the answer. Tell us a little bit about ADL and what you're all a part of, because we're partnering with ADL, but we want to hear what you're doing with ADL, and kind of educate people as to what it is and what you're doing and what it's done for you.
Great question. The Anti-Defamation League, also known as the ADL, is an organization that aims to eradicate anti-Semitism along with hate everywhere. And we are all part of this program called the Teen Trainer Program, which is exclusive to the ADL Connecticut. And we all participate in the Words to Actions or Julia Star program, where we educate other Jewish teens about anti-Semitism. I shouldn't even say teens. We educate Jewish people from all ages about the dangers of anti-Semitism and what we can do to combat it.
Well, I'll tell you, man, that's really great, and what a great organization, and what a gift for people to get a chance to hear what you have to say. And because you're a storyteller, and I believe everything, by the way, is about storytelling, and we all have our stories. And perhaps your story can shift other people's story about what anti-Semitism really is about. So if you could just give us, an abbreviated, I know not too much of an abbreviated story of what happened to you and where this all came for you, where the passion around this came, would be very helpful for all of us to hear.
Sure. So I was 14 years old when, like all 14-year-olds, I went to high school. And I decided not to go to my typical public high school. I went 40 minutes away to a high school to the second most diverse high school in the country, so I could learn about different cultures and experience new things. Specifically, I wanted to learn Arabic, and I was interested in Middle Eastern history. And one day in Arabic class, a boy comes up to me.
What school was this, by the way, Jesse?
I don't feel comfortable saying that on the air.
Okay.
A boy comes up to me and he calls me a fucking kike. He denies the Holocaust. And over the past month afterwards, he repeatedly shoves me into lockers and on the hallway. He shows me pictures of his father's gun. And it got to a point where I was missing, on average, 3 days of school a week because I was afraid that the next day would be the day where he brought the gun in and shot me.
Wow.
And so I transferred in March.
What did the school do? Did the school know what was going on, and how'd they handle it?
I think they handled it exceptionally poorly. When I told them, they didn't really know my name. One of the guidance counselors had the audacity to ask, "Are you sure he didn't like you?" And they ignored the situation. They wouldn't even put him in a different class. And what they did was they had him do a 2-day in-school suspension, which for me was not sufficient enough, knowing that he was still in the school. his friends tried to rough me up to see if I was the one who ratted him out, because there were other witnesses there who can confirm my story. And it got to a point where it was really dangerous for me to go to school, and the very systems designed to protect me were blatantly failing.
And how did your parents deal with this? They must have been infuriated, and what they do with it?
They didn't know what to do. I mean, who does? Who expects their daughter to come home and be like scared for her life?
And no support from the school system.
No. So they did everything they absolutely could, and they're amazing parents, and I love them so much. But
I'm sure they're watching. You hear that, Mom and Dad. I guess you can smile hearing Jesse say that about you.
Yeah.
It's
so
nice.
They did all they could. They really supported me mentally, and we got through it together. I can only imagine the terror I was at when I was first going through it.
Did you have to go for therapy for that? Were you traumatized? Where did you go for the help and support after that? I know they transferred schools, obviously.
Yeah, which was helpful. And I also, again, the ADL has been essential in my recovery.
Is that when ADL came into your life after that incident?
Yes, it really also reaffirmed that it happened to me, because, again, I was 14 years old. I believed everything he told me. And so through their support and through the opportunity to tell my story and affirm that it happened, it has really helped me heal.
That's fantastic. And how did you find out about ADL?
My mom went and reported a hate crime. They have on their website, and Susan Walden, one of the directors for the ADL Connecticut, came up to me. She contacted me directly, which was amazing, and they were just so empathetic and great listeners, and I really got involved. So they suggested I become a trainer, and so I did.
And as a trainer, what do you do as a trainer?
So I teach about anti-Semitism to younger generations mostly. I also have been on panels like the national one for Never Is Now, Fighting Hate from Home. I've done a teen panel where I discussed anti-Semitism in schools. And so mostly what I do is tell my story, and I help people come up with strategies just in case they ever find themselves in a similar situation.
You feel you're hearing stories similar to yours in the kids that you're meeting and educating?
Unfortunately, all the time. It is all too common. From even fourth grade, I had a girl come up to me one day after and said a boy made fun of her nose and called her mom a dirty Jew.
Wow. And let me ask you, because I think people are a little bit in the sand about this, using a lot of a quote that you'll probably use later on about having the head in the sand or being under the rug. This is not just happening in Darien, Connecticut. Am I correct? Can you tell people where you're seeing this? Where this is happening?
I'm seeing this everywhere. My story is one of thousands, potentially one of millions. Wow. And the amount of support I get from strangers online, even when I just post a simple thing about my story, is both phenomenal and amazing, but not amazing in a good way. Because for every good comment I receive 5 bad ones.
Wow. So it's all over Connecticut. It's in our backyard.
It's everywhere. It's especially in Connecticut.
Especially in Connecticut?
Especially in Connecticut, because you wouldn't think of, I guess, Connecticut as a state where that sort of hate can exist. Like right now, I go to a 30% Jewish-ish school, and there's still people calling people Jewish American princesses. We still don't have all the Jewish holidays off. And if you dare take a Jewish holiday off, you are penalized by extra homework, unsupported teachers sometimes, and it's a problem. And again, I get questioned for my necklace all the time. I am knowingly living in a world, in a country, in a state that was not designed for people like me.
Wow. Well, Samantha, why don't you pick up on this, okay? Because I'm already overwhelmed, and I'm sure everybody that's watching is already overwhelmed. So tell us why you're here, what makes this an important show for you, and pick up on anything you want to respond to what Jesse's already said. Because I know you're all friends, right? You're all in this ADL communal thing together, right? Which is really very special, right?
It is a beautiful thing. We've worked together in programs and with the public, but I think that...
What year are you in, by the way, Samantha? I meant to ask you.
I'm a senior.
Jesse, what year are you in?
I'm also a senior.
Okay, so okay, good. That's good. Okay, so go ahead. It's good for people to know that. Samantha, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. If I were to give one message primarily off the bat before I start, it is that similar to what you guys were saying, if you are out there watching this show and you think that anti-Semitism is not happening near you, you are wrong. Anti-Semitism exists in every corner, and for a while I was fortunate enough not to see it, but it is there, and you don't see it for a reason. You don't see it because it is brushed aside as insignificant. You don't see it because people are afraid to stand up. They're afraid that their experience is invalid because they don't hear enough of their stories represented. So if you are coming onto the show unfamiliar with anti-Semitism and believe that it's not a problem that affects you or anyone around you, that's a misconception and that's wrong. And if you are here and you experience anti-Semitism, then we're here to share our stories, our perspectives, advice. Yeah.
We'd like to hear your story.
Absolutely.
Jesse's already blown us away with her story.
Yeah. Every single time I'm taken aback when I hear Jesse speak. It's appalling, and then your passion to stand up is incredible. I was fortunate enough for a while, for most of my life, to be in a community and in a space where I didn't experience anti-Semitism. A Jewish overnight camp where we had how to be an upstander, programs, and a very school with a strong anti-bullying policy. But
so you went to Jewish camps. I was going to ask you, like, what kind of things helped you to support your Judaism and reinforce it for you?
My community, the strength, the fortitude of my connections. Absolutely.
Can you tell us where you're from, or do you feel also not comfortable saying that?
Yeah, I am from Connecticut. Yeah.
I wanted to say you're from Connecticut.
That's what I want to say.
Okay, that's fine. I want to respect that. That's okay. I get it. So go ahead. Tell us your story.
I first experienced my most blatant and direct experience with anti-Semitism when I was in a very small after-school meeting with some kids when no teacher was present. Small group of kids. We were playing an online game. We were putting in our usernames for said game online. And as most people do when you're playing online games, you put in a fun username. You put in something that isn't your name for fun. And immediately I saw two usernames pop up. They were Dirty Jew, Evil Jew, Jew Suck, right in front of my face, on my phone, right in front of me. And I had never seen anything like that before. And when I saw this, I had been a teen trainer for the ADL for 5 months at this time, and I did not know what to do. That's very scary, not knowing what to do, being in a position that you don't know what to do. And I had taught workshops by this point, so just that fear is strong.
How old were you when this started?
This was freshman year. So similar to C14. And yeah, I did stand up. I said, "Is this a joke?" And then with the heat of embarrassment, I ran out of took my backpack and left. And I did not return to that club for a very long time. I was nervous to go back to the club. And I also had gone to my guidance counselor and was nervous about the retribution from members of that club because I had gone to another level of authority. The school response was not what I had hoped for. I was told that because there was no concrete proof that these students had put in the usernames. Meanwhile, I had seen them laugh when I asked them, "Is this a joke?" and raise their hands actually to admit that this was in fact them. I was told that there was no proof that it could be. I had a screenshot on my phone. I had my own story, and there was no proof that it was to these students. So to this day, I see them in the hallway. To this day, they were talked to as a group at one point, and I was asked repeatedly, "Was it me?" It was scarce, and say nothing more has happened.
And you stayed. You didn't transfer from like Jesse transferred to another school. You stayed in the same school.
I did not transfer. No, I did not return to any of those meetings. And a similar experience. It was entirely brushed aside. Yeah.
Were you finding other Jewish kids in your school, Jesse? This is a question. I'll get back to asking all of you more about this later on. Did you find that other Jewish kids were experiencing the same thing as you, and were you getting any support from them around this?
So I was nervous to tell people because I was nervous that I would get the response, you didn't say the right thing, or you didn't do the right thing, or I've never seen anything like that, so that must have been a one-off experience. I have since been outspoken with some of my friends, and my activism has grown stronger, and my passion to speak up has grown stronger. And our school has consistently been, students have been afflicted by these types of offensive.
Now, this was happening. This was happening to you from non-Jewish kids. Am I correct?
Yes.
It wasn't Jewish kids, because sometimes I was going to. Jewish kids are known to sometimes do that also, but it wasn't happening. Right.
And it's okay to them because they're Jewish, and I because I'm Jewish. There's no such thing as a Jewish joke, that doesn't exist. So anything that makes someone uncomfortable, anything that invalidates someone, it's not a joke.
Did you feel, so where did you get your support? From your parents, from anywhere else? Therapy, or what did you do with all this?
I similarly went to the ADL. That was my first response. I emailed Susan Walden, who Jesse had mentioned, the director in the ADL, who I had worked with, and I just said, what do I do? And she gave me advice. She was the one that told me to go to my guidance counselor. She said, bring those pictures that you have on your phone, because if you are to take anything away, you have to document, you have to have proof. Mine wasn't enough, but she was the one that advised me to do that. I did tell my parents, and I was nervous to tell my parents because I was nervous. I had never experienced something like this the first time, and I was nervous to say that something like this had happened to me, and I was nervous that I wouldn't have done the right thing, that I would supposed to do something that I didn't. I was afraid that I was supposed to be stronger than that, but I did go to them, and they were incredibly, incredibly supportive.
And it's gotten better for you now?
Yeah, I haven't seen that. But I was told recently, this week actually, that there had been a few years back, there had been swastikas and offensive writing written on walls. It's been painted over. I had not heard of this before this week because just like the images, it had been painted over, it had not been mentioned. I had been told that, me taking time off for the Jewish holidays was, weak. And I've had friends with jokes that I've had to stand up to. So maybe it has not come about it. But my strength in standing up has gotten a lot stronger.
So you stand up for yourself more now?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have friends, and Jesse, I'll ask you all this later too, but I'll ask you now, is you have friends that are not Jewish that treat you well with respect as well?
Absolutely. We can talk about this later on in the show, but being an ally, whether Jewish or not Jewish, is one of the strongest things that can help support someone when they are going through something like this. So yeah.
Is there anything you want to add about ADL and what you guys are part of that hasn't already been mentioned tonight before I move to Alana?
I think Jesse really touched upon it really well. I am always incredibly inspired after our meetings. I've had parents reach back to me after our meetings and say, I had this experience and can you help? Or my son, my daughter, this happened to them. What can you say? And I think that is an incredible resource that I can provide, but so many other resources that the ADL provides to help.
And I'll ask you the same question I asked Jesse. You're hearing as many stories about this as she is, and it's all over Connecticut.
I'm appalled when I hear the young ages that are experiencing these things, these Jewish jokes that Jews belong in the ovens. I heard a grader tell me that they had heard that.
That's a fourth grader. That's how far down it goes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for what you've already said.
Thank you.
And now we'll meet your other friend. It's Alana's turn. Alana, you can blow our minds even more now, or add to the blown minds of tonight's show, and tell us what brings you here tonight and what you want to say, and add anything you've already heard, or just go right into your story.
I want to reiterate what both Samantha and Jesse have said. I'm really here to let Jewish students who've experienced anti-Semitism know that they are not alone. I also want them to know that they can respond and that they can that by reaching out to people, they can get the resources that they need to respond. I also am here to talk about my story because I know that our school administrations won't talk about it. And I want it to be known that this does exist in my school. It probably exists in every school in Connecticut, if not every school in the United States. And it needs to be talked about. One of the quotes we were talking about before the show is from Margie Lipsch's, and she says, "Our schools have such lumpy rugs because everything gets swept under them." And I'm really here because I want to take this stuff out from under the rug. We need to talk about it.
How have you personally experienced? We've already heard 2 stories tonight. What have you personally experienced in terms of anti-Semitism in your life?
The first time I saw anti-Semitism in my school firsthand was in 6th grade. I was sitting at the lunch table, eating my lunch, talking with my friends, and the kids at the lunch table next to mine started standing up and saluting Hitler right in front of everyone, in front of the teachers on CAF duty. And me and my sister looked at each other, and we were both really uncomfortable by this. And we saw the cafeteria, the teacher on CAF duty, start to walk over, and we thought, she's going to say something. They're going to get a consequence. This isn't okay. We feel so uncomfortable. And she didn't. She just said, "You sit down, sit down." And nothing ever happened. No one ever talked about it again. Then through middle school and high school, I saw swastikas on desks, science lab stations, music stands, desks. And when we reported these to the teachers, they erased them and went on with the class. No one talked about it. No one acknowledged it. And then I started hearing Holocaust jokes in the hallway, such as, "What's the difference between a Boy Scout and a Jew? Boy Scouts come back from the camps." Or what I think is the worst one is, "What's worse than the Holocaust? 6 million Jews." And I was completely appalled by these. These happened right in front of teachers, and the teachers said absolutely nothing. And I knew that I needed to say something, but I had no idea what to say. I heard these things, and I was just taken aback and appalled. But I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't want to escalate the situation. And I felt that if I did say something and it did escalate, that the teachers wouldn't have my back. And I was just so uncomfortable with it. And I knew from my experience, like Samantha at Jewish Sleepaway Camp, that I needed to say something, that I couldn't stand idly by. That's a big thing that we talk about. And so that's how I found ADL. And they gave me the resources to stand up for myself. And they also gave me the ability to teach other Jewish students how to stand up for themselves, which is an experience I'm extremely grateful for.
You're giving me chills right now, just so you know that. I have chills. And so how have you emotionally dealt with it? I mean, ADL obviously has been really important for all of you. Where have your other support systems come from? Friends, siblings, therapy? What other places have been helpful to you?
ADL has been a big one for me. I remember walking into the first meeting. My first teen trainer meeting was right around the Tree of Life synagogue shooting. And I remember walking in, and we were all just still recovering from hearing about this awful act of hate. And I remember everyone telling their stories, and I remember being like, "Oh my God, you've experienced this too? It isn't just my school. It's not just me." And then I brought that back to my school, and I started speaking out against anti-Semitism on social media and talking about it, writing essays about it for English class. And then I started hearing from other Jewish students that they've also seen this in our school. And we were able to talk about it, which I think was a really big thing for me, because we do have this culture of silence around anti-Semitism that we always say, it could be worse, it could be worse. But I really think we need to stand up against it now when it is in school, so that it doesn't escalate even more. And that's something that I've really learned from ADL and doing these workshops.
So what about, and this is for all of you can answer this one, I'm going to ask you because I'm talking to you right now. What about kids that are not Jewish, that are listening to the show, or who you know, and I'm sure you're friends with kids that are not Jewish, right? How do they respond to this?
I find a lot of my friends have been so supportive of me. I have friends who tell me like, "Oh, I heard a Holocaust joke in class and I stood up for you guys," even though I don't think a Holocaust joke is terrible for everyone. It isn't just Jewish students. Like, this shouldn't be happening. Everyone should be uncomfortable by this. I think that it's important that everyone talks about it. This isn't just a Jewish problem. This is an issue for everyone because, you know, when one person is being discriminated against, it is hate against everyone.
Are you getting more support in the school now? Are there any assemblies, or is there more talk about? Is there still? I get the sense from all three of you, you're not getting really the support in your schools that you need to get. Is that correct?
There have been committees that have been formed to make the school community more accepting. I haven't really seen a lot of concrete action. A lot of it has been maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that, but not a lot of concrete action.
Disappointing, I assume.
Definitely. I remember hearing about a swastika being drawn at the 6th grade school and then doing ADL workshops in my town and hearing from 6th graders and that they're still experiencing the same thing I experienced 6 years ago. And this has been going on for 6 years. I saw the same exact thing and the school is still doing nothing and they keep saying the same thing. We're going to do something. We're going to do something. When are you going to do something about it?
So where did you get your sense of being Jewish reinforced? Was it camps? Was it temple?
I think a lot of it comes from summer camp. A lot of my desire to speak up and speak against anti-Semitism comes from going to Jewish summer camp and learning, you know, you cannot stand idly by, that we need to speak up, never again. A lot of it comes from ADL.
Never again. Never again is something that just resonates in my ears more and more in listening to you all talk tonight. Never again, but it's like what we're talking about is like you're having your own, there's a Holocaust going on right around us right now.
It's definitely concerning to see the rise in anti-Semitism and the lack of response towards it. Because if there's anything that we learn from history, it's that we need to speak out against it when we see it, because otherwise it's only going to escalate.
So you're doing a great job creating the segue for the next part of the show, because I told you all we're going to get a little political. We're going to get a little bit into some deeper conversation. Before I even do that, though, the three of you obviously are very close. Am I correct? It appears that you've been through a lot together. Is that true? Yes, we're all saying yes, right?
Oh yeah.
What is it like listening to? I mean, you've heard all this from each other. What's it like listening to you all tell the story tonight, your stories to each other, knowing that everybody's listening to this?
Well, I get chills every single time. I have heard these stories multiple times, and every single time it's just as incredible to me. Their experiences and power that I know is still have on others.
It's having a lot of power on me. Mike, how are you feeling listening to this?
I mean, I experienced the same things when I was in school. So everything that they're saying, that was 20 years ago, was still going on. I saw the same swastika drawings, the same stupid jokes were being told back then. So there's obviously no new material. They're just repeating it, and it's not funny. I still experience it as an adult. And honestly, I admire all three of you because I don't know a lot of time what to do or how to respond. And usually my response is exactly the same as yours. I just get up and I just leave, and I just don't stay present. I mean, I was I was playing a game of Fortnite at one point a couple of years back, and some kid joined my group and started screaming "dirty Jew" or whatever, something like that, and I just left. I just left the group. It wasn't even worth it for me to argue with them about it.
So let me quote the New York Post. As recently as the New York Post seems to be having a field day lately, talking about anti-Semitism. There was an article recently in the New York Post about Columbia University that the college campuses, particularly they mentioned Columbia, that the anti-Semitism is at its highest point in years. And 600%, it's up in Europe. In England, for instance, in England right now, it's up 600%. So it's happening all over Europe. Obviously happening in Fairfield County in Connecticut, all of Connecticut. It's happening on the college campuses. How come we're not learning, and how come we're not talking about it more?
We actually have a similar comment from the audience. I think that the panel wants to talk about. Alana, do you want to address that first?
Sure. So the question was, what can kids do, especially because saying something isn't bringing about the needed change? So a big thing that we put an emphasis on in our Words to Action program is that we need to create a pause in the conversation whenever we hear anti-Semitism. Many of these include asking a question, just simply saying ouch. That's a big one. We talk about the ouch strategies, just creating some type of pause, because a lot of kids are actually just repeating what they see on social media or something that they heard because they think it's funny, especially in middle school, which is when I saw a lot of anti-Semitism. So we talk about creating that pause. We also talk about the pyramid of hate, that when we create this pause and we make someone think about it and they realize, oh, that's actually pretty hurtful, that will stop anti-Semitism at its source, at the base of the pyramid of hate. And it doesn't allow it to move up the pyramid of hate. And that even though it doesn't feel like that's a lot, we are preventing that one person from escalating. And if we think about it, if we all did that, imagine if everyone spoke up every single time they saw hate and stopped everyone from moving up the pyramid of hate, we'd live in a lot better of a world.
Something I actually noticed this week, when having a conversation with someone who brought up something that was anti-Semitic, I asked them, "What do you mean?" A very simple question, and it forces them to think about what they said, to actually have to reiterate what they said, and that can be very effective because that's uncomfortable. You say something offensive and you have to explain what you said. That's uncomfortable, and you want to make them uncomfortable because then you can either step forward if you're have a conversation with them. You can go to some other level of authority. You are totally free to take a step back and figure out what your plan is. You don't need to initiate that conversation right away, but make them think and make them uncomfortable. And you can do that by just asking, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I like that.
I completely agree. And can you pull the comment up again for everyone to see? So the one thing this comment addresses is systemic anti-Semitism, which is not talked about enough. Alana and Samantha both amazingly dealt with individual anti-Semitism and how individual jokes can really lead up the slope to a pyramid of up to the final level, which is genocide. But besides just individual hate, there's systemic anti-Semitism, which also is a problem. So you're asking, what has other generations failed to do that we are trying not to? What can we do? What makes this generation different? And this generation, I believe, has access to things that other generations haven't, specifically social media and the internet. I believe the three of us and all the other teen trainers and anyone who cares about making a difference has utilized this power for the greater good. And by causing awareness first and on an individual level, preventing the situation in individuals so that we can solely focus on systemic anti-Semitism, which includes changing policy, changing curriculum in school, and changing the way we think about Jewish people is exactly what we're going to do. And that is what we today are here to do.
And what do we want to change about, educate people about Jewish people? What is it you want them to know about Jewish people?
What do I want people to know about Jewish people?
Yeah.
I think that the truth, that simultaneously there is no and there is all, that's it, Jewish people. So I'm no different than anyone else simply because I believe in a different God. But at the same time, that aspect of my identity has shaped the way I think. But you don't need to stereotype me based on what book I read, based on what I wear on my necklace, based on what my nose looks like.
Just base you on your humanity.
Yes, please.
How's that? Just based on who you all are, which is beautiful humanity that you're both all expressing. So, but how come it's so, like we say, never again? It's amazing that we're living in a time like this. How come it's just getting worse now? Is it social media that's doing it? I mean, what is it that is making it's getting worse and worse? What is that? You guys.
Something I think about it is that we don't talk about it enough, especially because anti-Semitism comes from the entire political spectrum. There's anti-Semitism on the right, there's anti-Semitism on the left. I go to a school that is definitely more left-leaning, more what many people say liberal. And anti-Semitism exists in liberal circles, and oftentimes it's more camouflaged than what we would consider anti-Semitism on the right, which we often associate with neo-Nazis and flying swastikas. Anti-Semitism on the left, which often comes from more just unconscious bias, people being apprehensive to speak up against anti-Semitism because we have this society that says, if you stand up against anti-Semitism, there's things that people automatically assume about what you think about Israel. So people often are scared to talk about it. We need to talk about it. That's the really big thing.
What do you think we need to talk about it when it comes to that?
Honestly, just that it exists. There's people who still don't think that anti-Semitism exists in our school. I've experienced it. I've seen it firsthand. Anti-Semitism isn't just people wearing shirts that say 6 million wasn't enough at the Capitol. It isn't just protests in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's swastikas on desks. We need to talk about these because these are what grow and become the hate that we see on social media. People are joking until they aren't, and we need to acknowledge that.
And actually, the New York Post wrote another article about how the progressive left is now basically sees anti-Semitism as an accepted racism. That's the progressive left. The New York Post just did an article about that just a few days ago. Did you have any response to that particular article?
I'm not familiar with that particular article, but it's definitely something I'd be interested in looking into.
Yeah, the New York Post did it, but I think it's basically addressing what you're saying is it's coming from the right, it's coming from the left. And of course, then there's Jews against Jews. We got the whole thing going on in Israel between the Palestinians and what do we all think about what's going on with that? Because, we now know we live in a country where people don't have dialogues. I had an experience the other night where I got my head cut off for having an opinion. I couldn't have a dialogue. But what do we think about Israel now? What's your opinion about Israel and how all this political stuff is affecting the anti-Semitism that you're all experiencing or not?
I think that my opinion on Israel isn't very relevant to anti-Semitism, but I do think that kids in my school and people everywhere are scared to speak out against anti-Semitism because people often assume that if you speak out against anti-Semitism, you believe X about Israel or you believe Y about Israel. And that's not the case. We can speak out against anti-Semitism and we can still criticize Israel. We can criticize Israel in a way that isn't anti-Semitic.
Agreed.
I like that. Samantha, you want to add to that, or Jesse?
I would just like to add on that your piece about the dialogue. We need to have this dialogue because this conflict isn't just something that you post on social media about. This is something that you can't relate, as Alana said, your opinions on political policy in Israel to my Judaism, because those aren't one and the same. So I can believe in the strength of the Jewish people and the strength of the people of Israel, but I can't be expected to speak out about all of the policy in Israel because they're not one and the same.
Jesse, you want to add to this?
I would love to. I think this issue goes a lot deeper than anti-Semitism in Israel, though. There's a difference between saying we cannot support spending $1 billion to help Israel's Iron Dome because we need to decrease our military spending. And there's a difference between that and I cannot support Israel because of misinformation about how they treat Palestinians. And that is a big problem. I think this problem of Jews being related to Israel, because personally I feel a connection with Israel. And for me, any harassment towards Israel is inherently kind of towards me in a sense. Although there is a way to criticize Israel without being anti-Semitic, I believe that is a very fine line. And so right now we need to define that line rather than focus on the little itty bits. And as for your Dr. Don, your note about culture and talking and starting a dialogue, that is a deeper conversation. And I don't know what the true root cause of it is.
Yeah, it frustrates me that the people just, it goes back to what I was saying, what David Brooks was saying tonight about, we learn more from really hearing from other people like we're doing with you all tonight, to just, listen to people's behavior and what they've experienced. It's not the why, but it's the when, how, where, and when that this happens, and the how of it all. And it seems like, what is it? What do you all think? How come we can't just have conversations with people, even have differences of opinion, and respect people for just being human? What does it have to be a label and a stigma attached to it? What is that about the human condition? As teenagers.
That is such a beautiful world to live in. That we unfortunately do not. So I think, there's often fear of bringing on topics, either for not being educated on them or for getting pushback on them. But the importance lies in having those conversations, because some of the people, the people that were asserting these really offensive ideas on us aren't going to be the people that are going to ADL meetings to learn about how not to be anti-Semitic. So having these conversations to promote to others, there are strong people that are not going to take that, and we're going to stand up for ourselves. And here's why, that affects us. Here's why what you're saying is bad, is going to spread that pride and spread that strength to stand up.
What I love about the three of you that I think we can all admire tonight is that there's such a resiliency and determination to keep going and educate and get people to hear your message. What is it? What's the driving force for the three of you to make sure that people get your message tonight?
Dr. Don, did you want to address? We had a comment.
We have another comment?
Actually directed to you
Okay.
from Lee Rauweiser. Wants to know if you've experienced anti-Semitism as a child growing up.
Oh my God, I got plenty of anti-Semitism growing up. Yes, I did. Either by the way I looked physically, or by how my lifestyle, how I was living my lifestyle. Lots of judgments about that. How about you, Mike? I mean, you already talked about it. Of course, this is not new. This has been going on forever, as far as I'm concerned. So,
honestly,
yes.
I would be completely surprised if any Jewish person came on and said that they had never experienced anti-Semitism. I think it's that prevalent in society that it's what everybody has experienced it.
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't think I would say this on air, but I don't have any problem saying it. When we went to Munich, my wife and I, we traveled to Germany and Munich. We saw Dachau. We, did the whole Holocaust thing and did the concentration camps. Some German guy came up and grabbed my nose. He literally came up to me and grabbed my nose. So can I say it any more specifically then that could still even happen now?
Yeah.
Can I be what do you think, ladies? Can I be any more dramatic than that?
I mean,
That's
you could
terrible.
use some more adjectives. I'm joking.
What's that?
You could use some more adjectives.
Well, I'll give you one, not an adjective, but I'll give you a story that happened in Weston when I was raising my kids. I overheard a conversation from a non-Jewish family talking about those Jewish American princes and princesses that were going to sleepaway camp in Maine and in New Hampshire, and how the Jewish privileged kids were getting to go to sleepaway camp, and calling them Japs, calling them princesses, and I was horrified. And when I was living in Weston, Connecticut, when my kids were young, the Jews were really a minority. It was tough. It was tough for my kids. It was tough for my wife and I. And listening to the three of you tonight, it doesn't sound like it's the statistics don't matter. It's there and it's real and it's happening all over the world.
I want to know, actually, for the panel, how do you all feel knowing that all these things were experienced by Dr. Don when he was in school, by me when I was in school, and they're still here and nothing has changed? Like, how does that make you feel? Yeah,
and how does it keep you? And that goes back to my question where we had we didn't get to do it, is like, how do you keep going? Well, it's so easy to get discouraged and depressed. So I agree with Mike. How does that make you feel, and how does it keep you going?
What, am I going to let them win? Am I going to let them win? Am I going to let them get to me? Here's the thing. There's type A, there's type B, and there's type me. I am very laid back. I cope with humor. I'm the type of person that says, don't give them attention. I'm going to ignore it. But on anti-Semitism, the way that boy made me feel is unacceptable. And I empathize with you, Dr. Don, and I empathize with you, Mike. And I feel so badly that you had to go through that and nothing happened. But the fact that nothing happened is why I'm here. And that's what keeps me going.
And I love that, Jesse. I love your spirit. And how about the other two of you? The two of you, what do you say about that?
It's definitely incredibly frustrating to know that this has been going on forever and it's still happening, and that no one's doing anything. And that's really the reason why I'm here, why I love being part of ADL, is because we need to talk about it. And maybe if we talk about it, it will change. And at least, even if it doesn't change, it can't be ignored anymore.
And Samantha, you want to say anything about this too?
Absolutely. I am here on this panel today. I am here going to ADL training sessions. I'm here standing up to my friends because I'm not surprised. Because I'm not surprised that you experience that and that we continue to experience that. And we got to stop it at its source. And we got to stand up. And that strength comes from my pride in being. That strength comes from not wanting us to experience that same experience, that same fear. And that strength and that pride comes from my community. The strength of knowing that other teen trainers like Jesse and Alana are out there, and other people are fighting for me, and I'm fighting for myself.
Is it really a respect for humanity and just a respect for being just who we are, not what our religion is?
Yeah.
It's just basically common humanity to respect, right?
Yeah, and that does not come naturally to some people. So we gotta work on that.
I have a question, because I have a lot of people that, including my grandchildren and a lot of people watching the show tonight. How important is a bar mitzvah and a bas mitzvah? I'm just curious. I just thought I'd throw that out there in terms of Jewish identity, in terms of, because it's now, you hear a lot of comments about how bar mitzvahs have become these extravaganzas, and some kids who are not raised in religious families are not really thinking it's cool to be bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah. I'm just curious about Jewish education and how important you think that is.
Incredibly important. I've heard. I've been going to just for the swag, just for the sweatshirt. People have their bar mitzvahs just for the checks. And when I stood on the bima wearing my great grandfather's talit, when I could invite my non-Jewish friends to my experience, to see my and see how proud I was of it, and to be a part of, and to have this induction into this, not induction, I've always been a part of this community, but this stepping up in this community, such a strength. It's such a
it's not about the party, it's about the tradition for you, right?
I mean, the party, but it is not all about.
The party's probably really a lot of fun and you get some great presents, but it's really, you're saying it's about the tradition.
It is 100% about the tradition. And brother went to Israel for his bar mitzvah. And seeing this question in the chat of the experience of Israel, that connection to my faith, to my roots that I had never felt before as strongly. It is a connection. I love the Jewish saying, "L'dor v'dor," from generation to generation. It's getting passed down, and that strength is going to be continued to pass down.
That's a beautiful thing. I'd like to hear Jesse and Lana comment on that too, by the way, that question. Can you do that, Jesse?
Oh, sure.
I love that, by the way. I love what you just said, by the way, Samantha.
I completely agree with Samantha that exposure for non-Jews of Jewish culture is important, but I think there's another aspect of this, and I'd like to use a story, actually. So my youngest brother was diagnosed with autism when I was 6 years old. He is a special man, and this summer he was recently bar mitzvahed. It took him 3 years. Granted, 2 of them were COVID, of him going to temple. And unlike us, where we had to learn a couple of prayers, he had to learn how to sit down in temple. He had to learn how to not take breaks. He had to learn when to stand and when to sit because his brain doesn't function like ours. But for him, having the bar mitzvah was one of the most important and influential times of his life because he got to experience the feeling of being important, of being listened to, and truly becoming a man. It helps that he has 2 older siblings that went through the experience, but at the same time, he got to feel it. He got to feel celebrated. He got to be praised for his Jewish identity. He did the blessing over the challah like a absolute pro. My rabbi was like, he's doing this every week. He was absolutely amazing. And for him, that was not only a boost to his confidence, but that was a boost to people with autism showing that they could do it. So for him, yes, it was a successful story. but it was also just a way for us all to feel so much pride and be proud of all our work, because we all helped him with the standing. We all helped him try to put on the talit. Every Friday, we would all practice the cup of wine with him.
Mm.
And so for us as a family, it was a truly pivotal moment.
So communal storytelling, tradition, celebration, passing down, honoring. So you that's a beautiful story. Wow. That's really something to hear. And how about you, Alana?
I think that it's been incredibly important to be part of a Jewish community, to go to Jewish sleepaway camp, to have a bat mitzvah, especially because I've learned a lot through these that our Judaism really teaches us, like I've said before, to speak up, to say something. And also, like Samantha was saying, the tradition of it that we've been talking about, that we've all experienced this anti-Semitism in every generation, but we've also experienced bar and bat mitzvahs in every generation and celebrating our culture. So while it's important to talk about anti-Semitism, it's also important to talk about the beautiful culture that we embrace when we are Jewish.
Do we need to make education and Jewish education more appealing so some of these other generations now see bar mitzvah and bas mitzvah as something to embrace, such as Jesse's story and, well, all of your stories, really? Do we need to change anything because sometimes I find it's like it's become almost Jews becoming anti-Semitic about being Jewish. We saw that in the 60s, by the way, just so you know. I want you to know this is a big thing for me to share with all of you. In the 60s, during Vietnam, and it was the whole hippie culture started, there were actually Jewish kids changing their names, their last names, were ashamed of being Jewish. I'm seeing a little bit sometimes of like Jews sometimes not really being the way the three of you are about Jewish education, Jewish tradition. Do you sense that that's happening? And do you think there's anything more we can do about that? Certainly tonight's show helps.
I do sense that that's happening. At the most basic level, it's kids not wanting to go to Sunday school. But at that high level, it's Jews not being connected to their faith and feeling like it's okay to say things about their appearance, others' appearances, delegitimization of their culture and their tradition. So I think it needs to start with that pride, and that pride is a strong community. So, the Jewish faith, we're all about the community. And so that's where that strength is going to come from. I learned so much in my Hebrew, and I learned Hebrew, and I learned culture, and I wrote letters to survivors, which was all influential on me. But that community that is telling me keep going. We are strong people. We are here for each other.
So parents are probably listening to you right now, all over the country. Having kids that say, I don't want to get bar mitzvah. Oh, maybe I'll go because I'll get some presents and I can have a party. What would you tell these parents to do with making it more attractive? I mean, you've already done a great job, but is there anything else you could say to make honoring your Judaism, a bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah, as a celebration of their heritage? Is there anything as a parent that you could say to parents to make it more meaningful and to deal with kids that are so resistant to doing that?
I mean, if you've made it 80 or 58 minutes into this thing, I hope that your strength and your Judaism has been energized. But
that's great. I like that a lot, by the way.
Yeah, but just like what you were saying, that strength of community and strength of heritage, you said, it's a community. It's a heritage that I constantly things, I think, within my Jewish community. And so that bar mitzvah is it is a day that leading services, but so much more than that. It's a connection to everyone around you, all the Jews around you. Heritage.
Did the three of you know that in the 1960s, of course you didn't live during the Vietnam War and the protests of Vietnam, and when people growing their hair down to their shoulders and started smoking pot and doing all those kind of things, that it was actually Jews being embarrassed to be Jewish and changing their names and becoming like yogis.
What about Bob Dylan, right? Mr. Zimmerman changed his name to Bob Dylan. So
what do you all think about that? I don't know if you have known much about that or not, but I'm just curious, do you have an opinion about when Mike just said, yeah, Bob Dylan did it? That's right. He was Zimmerman, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, you guys, I mean, figured we're reaching the tail end of the show. I just figured I'd give you a little bit of the 60s culture and just see if you have any opinion about that. Are you surprised by that, or did you know about that? Do you see any of that now?
I mean, I see a comment that says, I was ashamed. I was not ashamed. I was afraid. And I'm assuming that's in response of being a Jew in the 60s.
Yes,
And
that's correct.
Yeah.
yes. And I feel to me that really hits home the point we're trying to make of systemic anti-Semitism, that we need to also be proud of our Jewish heritage and bring that up from birth. I was lucky. I have great parents, and they really installed Jewish ideas. And for me, a lot of my Jewish pride comes from traditions. I never liked Sunday school. I never liked Hebrew school, but it was those holidays that made my gears turn. I loved it.
Yeah, holidays.
So, yeah. So for me, that's what I would do to answer your last question. But that comment really, I think, says a lot about where we still are today. It's not that I'm ashamed of my Hebrew necklace. It's that if I wear it in New York City, I might get harassed.
Is that what when I'm seeing this comment on the screen? I wasn't ashamed. I was afraid. You mean, I assume that question of being afraid meaning the fear of declaring that you're Jewish and what would happen to you, right? You know, in terms is that what's being seen on the screen right now in terms of fear? I think that's probably true. I was thinking it was actually not cool to say you were Jewish. If you said you were a Jew from Long Island in the 1960s, I mean, it's unbelievable the judgments and derogatory comments that were made to people for that. So I guess, yeah, fear is a big problem here, right? It's a real fear, right?
Yeah. I was afraid to tell people I was Jewish when I was abroad, and I was afraid because incredibly outside of my comfort zone. But when we're talking about it, I actually a Jew from Hungary, and I was able to learn about some of her and some of her cultural experience. So there's a fear, but you learn an incredible new thing about an incredible person. And that connected me to my Judaism. My Judaism was reflected all the way across the world. And so we are a very large community. We are a strong community. We have a lot of strength in our pride and our traditions.
I am so incredible. I have chills right now. I am so incredibly proud and the honor to have the three of you on tonight. It makes Kids Are Talking. It gives it meaning, purpose, and now I know why I do this show. The three of you really reinforced to me exactly what the title of the show was tonight, that you want people to know and that you have a lot to say. And it's just a shame that there isn't more of this, and we're going to do more of this. You three, and I see the bond with the three of you, the honesty, the passion, the maturity, and thank you. Thank you, Jesse.
I think we also have to just once again, just say thank you to the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, for helping these young women, with the program. Without them, without the ADL, the program wouldn't exist. So kudos to them for taking the initiative to start so many young people on this journey, and for these three great people to take part in the teen trainer program. I think it takes a lot of courage and bravery to do that as well. So,
and again, Margie Lipschitz and Susan Walden and all of you at ADL, we're honored to be and grateful to have you as our partner. We want to do more shows. There is one other thing I was going to ask. Somebody brought up the thing about allies tonight. Was it you? So who brought up the concept of the power of the allies?
I think I did, but I think we've all touched on it.
Did we touch on the allies thing enough? And what did we specifically mean by? I'm just curious about what an ally is.
To me,
to feel supported. Go ahead.
To me, an ally is someone who isn't directly affected by the form of hate, but still stands up against it and still says this is not right and takes a stand and shows support for that minority group. Because it's often scary to stand up when you're a part of a minority group that's being targeted. And so if someone else who might not be directly targeted stands up, that gives others the confidence to also stand up.
So that's big. So I hope you all just heard that, because we hopefully gained a lot of allies tonight. You don't have to be Jewish. You don't have to be Muslim, we're all human beings, and to have the courage to stand up to just humanity and being able to just respect and acknowledge our existence for just who we are, not our labels. That's a beautiful thing. Is there anything before we close down tonight that the three of you want to say? We always do this at the end of Kids Are Talking. Is there anything each one of you, we'll start with you, Alana. What do you want to, what's your last word tonight to all of the people watching the show tonight?
I just want to say I'm incredibly grateful to the ADL for giving me the opportunity to speak up against anti-Semitism. And I also hope that if you've walked away with something from tonight, it's that everyone needs to stand up against all forms of hate that they see and how incredibly important that is.
Thank you for that message. Samantha?
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to have a platform. I'm proud to be. This is not the only way that standing up to anti-Semitism exists. It exists on much smaller levels every single day. Standing up to your friends, standing up to anyone around you, and that's very important. To anyone who is listening at this point, thank you for your dedication to be learning about this, and to hope to take the lessons that we've brought forward with you in everyday life and hopefully enlighten all of those around you, and to share our message of pride and strength.
Thanks for that. That's amazing. Well, last but not least.
I feel so honored. I don't know if I could top those two.
They're pretty good, but I'm sure you'll do as well as you're all just do your thing.
I want to say if it wasn't for the ADL, I would not be alive today because I was so insecure about my Jewish faith. And no matter who you are, no matter what background you come from, the first step is being secure with yourself and knowing and taking pride in who you are, whatever that means to you. So if that means stepping up in your traditions, if that means going to temple or church more often, if that means raising your children in a way that you think will make them solid in their identity, whatever you have to do, that is a step towards reducing the mental, emotional impact on them if it ever does happen.
So to quote David Brooks about extrospection, I've been humbled tonight and once again have learned a lot, as I hope you all have, to realize, as David Brooks said in his column, self-awareness may just be a mirage because we learn more about ourselves from listening to these three kids tonight, three teenagers. That's how we learn, by listening to the otherness of the other, and get self-awareness from hearing the stories and the experiences from these three teenagers who came on this show tonight to put it out there to all of you. So again, thank you. And from all of us, our Kids Are Talking, stay humble, stay open, and always know there's something else to learn. Good night.
Good night. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much. Stay back.